Okay, so I want to talk about something that is endearing, but also perhaps considered repulsive depending on the viewer and their upbringing and what they believe to be considered, because people love to criticize others' lives, but they have a hard time looking at their own self and looking at their own lives. So, I don't really want to title this as cultural programming, but it kind of is. Actually, it is really much. Because we are conditioned through society, through culture, through our religions to be a certain way, to act a certain way. And I found with the Armenian communities, doesn't matter which Armenian community, as a whole majority, unless the parents have taken accountability to change this mindset of their own, to implement it within their own kids, which majority, yeah, so there are some that have, and kudos to you, to each their own, we are battling, let's be realistic. This world, we battle. Every day is a battle in a sense. To survive, to be a good parent is cliche, because what does that mean? To each their own, to each culture, whatever it is. But I want to say, as a whole collective, Armenians are a group of people that like to be in denial about what goes on in their communities, within their own culture, within their own diasporans and nation, as well as what goes down within their own family members. As a collective, as a whole, when I say that, denial, they like to appear that they are a certain way. Family oriented, maybe liberal, maybe forward moving, maybe community oriented. They just like to appear as good people doing the right thing for their own families, for their own generation, for the generation to come, for other people's families, for their communities, for their diasporans, for their nation. That's how they like to appear to be. What goes down on the surface level is very different than what goes down in the deep behind closed doors in their own homes level. Okay? Who am I to judge? But again, the point of this channel is to always talk about things that people have a very hard time talking about, because we want to evolve as people. And even if you're not Armenian watching this can apply to you. And it is very difficult in this day and age to be religious. It's very difficult to be traditional, because everything is technology these days. Everything is exposed, everything is out there, especially when you're raising kids, let alone taking care of ourselves. I have always loved the concept of family life. I grew up in Canada, where that was pretty much destroyed by society, by the way the working system was. Me and my family, we never had the chance to really sit down and have dinner together. It just never happened. We never had the chance. And if we ever did have that moment to actually be together, there was always fights on how things should be, how things ought to be. And but when it came to other people seeing how we were as a family dynamic in Canada, as Armenians, as Christians, it was always about, we're a happy, tight unit family with no problems. My mom is the best mother on the face of this earth. We learned everything from her. We're such great manners. We are clean Christians, and a lot goes with the Armenian culture, in a sense that a lot of children are raised in. Now, with that being said as well, I'm not saying you need to, as a youth, in your teens, in your adolescence, or adult life, you need to come out and expose your own families and each other or whatever. No, that's not for everyone to do. I'm not saying that's the right thing either. However, there are certain elements that we must take as human beings if we want to evolve. And that is looking within our own selves, our own situations, our own families, our own upbringing, our own mental, whatever's installed in our brain, looking at our own values. Especially as women, it's very difficult as Armenian women, as Armenian girls, because we are not really taught that we are valuable. Let's be truly honest. We are not taught that we are valuable. The main value that they're placed on Armenian women is to look beautiful. Now, I'm not going to sit here and start bashing Armenian men, though I could, and I've done it before, but it's not necessarily bashing when you're speaking up the truth against a community of people who just want to hide the facts. where a lot of Armenian men abuse their own women and their sisters and their mothers and so on and so forth because, and I'm going to say because of certain conditions, certain conditionings, certain expectations, unrealistic things that are not up to date with society. I'm not here to destroy our culture. I'm not here to destroy how people are brought up. I'm just speaking. And I'm not talking about just sexual things. It's not about that. I'm talking about the denial aspect of how things operate. So when there's denial in the home, when there's denial within our communities, of course there's going to be denial when it comes to external. Now, as someone who's been in human rights, women's rights, and even advocating for boys and men in the past, this is wrong. It's wrong because here's the thing, and I don't want to just say this as the Armenian men, but a lot of Armenian women too are programmed to defend a person who's abusing someone else within our communities or the family members or so on when they're caught or when it's exposed, because it's shaming the person that shouldn't be saying these things. They're taught that it is shameful to be talking about abuse in the family, in the community. These things don't exist according to Armenians. Abuse is everywhere on this planet. It has no culture, it has no race, it has no nationality, it has no religion. Abuse can happen anywhere and everywhere. I think what happens is these people who do that defend the perpetrator in a sense that they don't want to look at their family members or other people who they think or they want to label as doing the right thing when they're not, because they're supporting abuse. Let me tell you, the person who tells you to shut up is actually forwarding, making the abuse happen more. Okay, and your value is being pushed down. So your value is being considered to be lowered. So you're going to look at yourself as less valued. Less valued within yourself, less valued within your own group of people, your own ethnicity, your own group, less valued with men and women. And a lot of times they look at it as I'm being protective, and so I am protecting my nation, but they're just protecting the abuser. And so we are considered to be labeled as an abusive, as normal when it's not. Now, I've talked to a lot of people who have done these abuses to. So I've talked to a lot of these people who cause a lot of abuses. So you know me, my background is psychology. I'm always studying the collective. I'm studying groups of people, studying communities and ethnicities, individual people constantly, even when I'm not even being paid for it. It's the way my mind operates. It's always been this way since I was little. I grew up alone. I raised myself alone. Anytime we were exposed to other people who would see the wrong that I was growing up alone till now, it was always my mother, quick to be on defense, getting my sister and brother to be like, my mother's the best mother, she does everything in the book for her daughter, screaming and shouting just to prove points that are not even valid. And to, again, shush me and silence me. Okay, I'm not trying to project my own personal problems into all of you to see your own personal problems. That's not what it is either. But to each their own. We all share a common ancestor. And this common ancestor really, really programmed us as people to silence the person who's being abused in any circumstance, or not even, let's say there was no abuse. And the person is doing the right thing, which is caring about other people, doing something that's maybe out of the box, maybe something that's just different than what the rest of the ants do. Because you know ants, how they operate, you know, insects, the ants, all of a sudden if the ant goes the other direction or proposes some other deal or something, this one, it needs to be rejected. The immediate mindset is we need to reject. Before we sit down and listen in a detached, intellectual manner, it's not even so much about respect, man. You don't have to respect someone to hear them out. Listen to what they have to say without... In case you're wondering why on earth I have devil horns on my head and why I'm using this for this video, I like to add a little bit of spirit of fun through heated, serious topics. Uplift it a little bit, you know, lighting some incense. But we have to understand as a people that sometimes what we believe isn't always necessarily the right thing. And that goes for all of us. So if we've been conditioned to believe something is right, like maybe dying for the sake of Jesus, as an example, but not living for the sake of Jesus, and two people who have different mindsets are fighting each other about it, perhaps sitting down and just listening to that person. What is it going to work with? Okay, well, perhaps we may learn something about ourselves. Perhaps we want to, perhaps we may learn from the situation. Perhaps we may learn from the person that you feel isn't. How can you ever be afraid of learning something? Why be quick to condemn something just because it goes against what you've been conditioned to believe? Guys, we live in 2023. Literally, there's fears that the banking system is going to shut down. People are going to lose everything. There's scarcity of food, money. Technology is taken over where people's body parts are going to be robotic. Our minds are going to be controlled. It has been since the beginning of time, but by chips and robotics. Yet, two people or a group of people cannot sit down and have a decent conversation about how to move forward without being offended, without attacking each other verbally, and without having to defend an abuser or an abusive situation. Why do people have to always take sides, in a sense that if you see an abuser, why do you have to take the side of the abuser? Why do you have to take the side because you feel it's your duty to protect an abuser? When has it ever been normal? Who taught you to believe that? Why did they teach you to believe that? Because it's not part of our culture? It's not part of our religion? Since when did they have the legal right? And where have they gone with that mentality? What successes have they achieved with that mentality? Are they successful in relationships? Are they successful in family life? Are their parents successful? I'm actually pretty sure that people who have mental illnesses will refuse to go get their brain checked. They will refuse to get checked by a psychologist or a medical doctor because they believe if they go get checked, society will tell them that they have an illness, but really society has an illness. And there are some truths to that. Society has an illness, of course. But it's also, if you're in denial about your own mental health and emotional state, and you want to blame whatever results come in because you find out maybe you do have a mental illness and that maybe you do have to take medication, though I'm not proposing that, then you have a major problem, and that runs very, very deep. And again, with that being said, that is something where my mother and my brother and sister in particular will refuse to always get checked because they know that the doctors or the psychologists are going to find a million things wrong, and that'll force them to evaluate and change their mental outlook. It'll force them to take medications. It'll force them to get in shape. It'll force them to do things differently. My family are against psychology. My family is against spirituality. They're just religious. So it's one-sided. And why I'm bringing this up is because a lot of people look at things one-sided. And why I've chosen to stay away from a lot of people is because all my life I raised myself to believe. And so I stay away, and I stay away because all my life I raised myself to believe and to go by the outlook of, in order for me to understand, I need to listen to other people's perspectives and really see it through their own perspective, not diminish my own. It doesn't mean I need to fight everyone. For what reason? Hear them out, listen to them. And I know and I understand not everybody has the same mind or heart as me. I can't expect them to be like me. However, I always go within. I always question myself, and anytime a memory or a thought comes up, whether it makes me feel good or whether I question it, whether it's the past, whether it's my family, whether it's other people, whether I agree with it or not, whether that person knew I agreed with them or not, I go within. Not to heal. So I understand emotions play a very pivotal role, very important for people. Emotions are vitally important. You never want to suppress it. You never want to ignore it. You never want to believe emotions are weak. It's not true. You want to feel whatever doesn't feel right to you. It could be your conditioning, family conditioning. It could be something that you caved into because it didn't feel right, but you wanted to fit in. It could be something someone says that goes against the grain or goes against community, whatever it is, or yourself, and it hurts. You want to feel what it makes you feel. No one's telling you shut it down. But what you want to do is feel it, where you realize you start digesting it and start to lift that emotion up to the mind and start intellectualizing, well, what can I do with this? What will I do with this? How can I let go of this? And so when you observe it and you take that thought or that emotion that, was a memory as a thought. Again, this can be a thought. This can be an emotion. This can be an emotion that's digested into a thought. You want to just observe it. And by letting go, you just remove it. And so it becomes less of an emotional reaction. So if you've seen me emotionally react through videos, it's because many, many years I've learned to look at people's perspectives where I did not react. I did not become emotional reactive. But there comes certain points where when people are fighting against you or doing something against you as a community, as a collective, when there's abuses, there's a punchline to it. Okay? So I think this topic can go in so many directions, and these type of topics can offend a lot of people, and then people come out and everybody says, oh, but the facts are this, oh, but the facts are that, but they're coming from they just want to push their own ideology into someone else without kind of hearing what the other person has to say. And when you want to say anything, oh, but the facts say this and the facts say that, what about the facts that go on in your own home, within your own self? Okay? So, there's a lot to this. And so this can go, like I said, in so many directions. So I'm just going to leave this video at this because I have my own life and I have my own stuff going on, and there's a lot of interest. Sometimes if you actually don't want to be agreeable with someone, again, you don't have to respect them. If you don't, I can't tell you what to respect, who to respect. The way I operate is if you don't show me that you're respectful, I'm not going to respect you. But being a human being with a mind, because at the end of the day, there is a reason we are above animals, as religious people want to call it, and that's because we have an expansive mind, but yet we don't use it as human beings. We just take charge of that animalistic nature and want to fight everyone and everything and not hear where the other person is coming from. So without taking to offense or without getting hurt. So observe your own emotional nature and observe your own thoughts. And that is one of the steps to moving forward as a collective. And like I was saying, and like I said, I have very fascinating people who are watching me from all over the world and in Armenia, and they're really willing to do things to make these big changes, and they're starting off within themselves. That's how you make these changes. Listen, I understand if you don't want to make changes. I understand if you want to be living in the 18, 16, 17, 1500s, that's fine. That's up to you. But there's going to be a time when you're going to be forced to look at and evaluate your life and your community, because shit's not working out for you. Shit's not working out for the family. Shit's not working out for the community. Shit's not working out for the nation. And we can't just keep blaming shit on the Azeris or the Turks or the Americans or the Russians and slamming it constantly without checking up on ourselves and saying, what are we doing? What are we doing with ourselves? If we cannot do with ourselves, how can we do? Yeah, so I can't speak on behalf of all Armenian families or like people here that degrade their own family. But there was that one guy, like I said, who did my washroom with his Azeri friend. His Azeri friend's wife would call him like 3 times a day, make sure he's fed, if he's hungry. And the Armenian one, Hovo's father, Artyom, he would just repeatedly keep saying how he can't stand being near his wife. He hates his wife. And I was like, why don't you guys call each other? My house was an excuse for him to have a chill out so he could stay away from his wife and daughter, who he would tell everyone he gives them money. Bullshit, you don't work. So it was like they're lovers. Just the way that he was like in love with this Azeri guy and he hates women. I'm pretty sure from like my upbringing, like in Canada as well as here in Armenia, that was like the only person I ever met who publicly treats women like shit, as well as his wife and daughter and daughter-in-law. Oh, you know, men can do what they want. They can be with other women. Women just have to shut up. His daughter-in-law had thyroid problems. She had to have part of her thyroid surgically removed. That's connected to the throat chakra. She's consistently silenced because in their family they believe men can do everything. Men can talk, do everything, and the woman has to shut up. This is very, very Islamic, pro-Islamic mentality, and it's just not. So I'm going to keep speaking up, guys. This is my channel. I think this is also a topic of a lack of understanding, the lack of wanting to understand self, and lack of wanting to understand where another person comes from, based off maybe the words that they use or so on and so forth. This is not just a battle of intellectual or emotional. This is a battle of the spirit, okay? What I mean by that is when there's going to be medicine involved, healing involved, understanding involved, evolution involved, it needs to be playing a part with body, mind, and soul. So psychology, yes, but more so psychospirituality, in a sense that adding spirit, your spirit, what heals the spirit, what is soothing to your spirit, what is soothing to the spirit of the community, or I'll leave it at that, okay?